This program is a part of the Full Press Radio Network. Find this and all of Full Press Coverage's shows on fullpressradio.com or free on the Full Press Coverage app, available now on the Apple and Google Play stores.
This is Amy Trask, and you are listening to Ira and Clark on the Eye Test for Two.
Welcome to this week's Eye Test for Two podcast. I'm Clark Judge.
I'm Ira Kaufman.
And we are both Hall of Fame voters, as I hope you know by now. And we're joined, as usual, by our Hall of Fame producer, Ian Glendon. But that's not all. We've got a very, very special guest with us today. One of the members of the Hall's class of 2021. And I'm talking about former Raiders and Packers star defensive back, Charles Woodson. And Ira, I'll be honest, when I would go into Green Bay, the first guy I looked for in that locker room wasn't the quarterback. It wasn't. I'd go to the other side of the room where Al Harris and Charles Woodson were dressing. And the reason was simple. They were smart. They knew what you were looking for, and they were really, really good at what they did. Charles Woodson, thanks for the time then, and thanks for the time today. Thanks for joining us, and congratulations on reaching Canton.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And I didn't know that there was somebody that looked for me before they looked for the quarterback, so that's good to
know. Good reason. You could fill a notebook, Charles. You were a great player, and you were a great interview. Quick question for you right off the bat. You were, as everyone knows, one of three finalists to make it this year in terms of the Hall of Fame in your first year of eligibility. Of course, Peyton Manning and Calvin Johnson were the others. Is that something that players in general consider special or significant? In other words, does it really matter if you're first ballot, fifth ballot, or 10th ballot?
I think that I would say I don't think it really matters. Once you're in, I think it is kind of, for the guys who are first ballot, it's kind of like a badge of honor, because 5 years out, you're in. But I know if I was to talk to Tim Brown today, he would say, "Man, Charles, I don't care how long I had to wait. I'm in the Hall of Fame, and it was worth every moment." So I think it's there's something to being first ballot. But I think for anybody that's in the Hall, I don't think they care when they got there. They're glad that they're in.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Tim Brown. I had that very conversation with him several years ago, and he told me the exact same thing. I didn't mention your credentials, and I'll go down them right now. I mean, you were Defensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, 9-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All-Pro, first-team All-Decade member, Super Bowl champion, and now, of course, a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Is this the most important achievement of your career? And if it is, why?
Is this the most important? I mean, that's a really tough question. I would say that the most important accomplishment of my career revolves around team. When you think about what you play the game for, you really play the game, to win games, to get to the playoffs, and to win the Super Bowl. So I would say my highest achievement really, comes from that team aspect and being able to play on a team that was able to put it together, for a full season and then go and punch it in and make it count, the last game of the season, which would be the Super Bowl. So, winning the Super Bowl to me was everything. I feel like, anytime I touched the field, that was the reason why, I went out there and played the game the way I did, because I was just trying to get to a championship. I feel like with the Hall of Fame is sort of like, the validation, for the way that you played the game. and how well you played the game. So it's more like the icing on the cake. So is it important? And I'm not trying to, of course, devalue making it to the Hall of Fame, but it was the championship and winning the Super Bowl. What was most important to me. It's the one thing I knew that when I retired, man, if I hadn't won a Super Bowl, then I wouldn't felt like my career was fulfilled. But of course, the Hall of Fame is like that icing on the cake, man. It just brings it all together.
Charles, I think the hallmark of your career, Charles, was your versatility, the sacks, the interceptions, touchdowns, tackles. Charles, along those lines, I'm going to ask you about a guy that's very dear to the people here in Florida, and that's Rondé Barber. Charles, did you enjoy watching Barber play, and what'd you think of his career?
Yeah, Barber was, you mentioned versatility. He was definitely, one of those guys that's going to be in that conversation as the most versatile, defensive backs in the game. He was a guy that, he excelled in the slot. You could play him on the outside. He was a guy that was always around the football. He's got his fair share of touchdowns and sacks, as well as I do. And, I just don't think it's going to be, very long, before he's in the Hall of Fame as well. So a lot of respect for Rondé and his career and what he was able to do and did it for a long time.
Charles, in 2012, well into your career, you kind of switched from the corner to safety. Charles, was that your idea? What was the thinking behind that?
Well, it's funny, man. It's just sometimes that's the way, you kind of get casted into a certain, position. And it had come to a point that when, I towards the end of my career, I remember, a friend of mine and teammate, Nick Collins, got hurt. And then I spent a little bit more time that last year playing safety for the Packers. And then, once I was a free agent, that's kind of what teams were looking at me as. It was a safety, and it wasn't a corner anymore. So it was kind of, myself saying, okay, this is what you guys see me as. I'm fine with that because I feel like I could play anywhere on the field. So it kind of became a challenge to me when I signed back with the Raiders and signed as a safety to go out there and try to build myself into being the best safety in the game.
We're speaking with Hall of Famer Charles Woodson, class of 2021. And Charles, as I mentioned earlier, you played for both the Raiders and the Packers. You just mentioned that as well. What was the biggest adjustment from going from the Raiders to the Packers?
The biggest adjustment, I just think it was probably just the city feel, that you have kind of there in Oakland, and kind of that that metropolitan feel, because Oakland is surrounded by a lot of different towns, and then San Francisco is right there, so you kind of have like a melting pot of a lot of different people, and so leaving from there and then going to a small market, which kind of reminded me of where I came from. I came from a small town. Green Bay is, a little bit bigger than where I came from, but you had that small town feel, and kind of like that, it was like a high school atmosphere because you got the stadium right there, smack dab in the middle of the town, and you got people driving in and parking in, other people's driveways and things like that. So I just think it was, going from kind of that feel, and then kind of going back to kind of like that small town, everybody knows everybody kind of feel.
Well, since you alluded to it, I also wanted to ask you the difference between the two fan bases. They're both passionate fan bases, but you've got Raider Nation and you've got the Packers fans. So in your mind, when you think about it, what's the biggest difference other than, for instance, the black holes in one place and the cheeseheads in the other, or the team colors, that sort of thing? The biggest difference between Raider Nation and Packers fans?
I think with the Packers, I think the Packers are, in my opinion, they're a little more lively, than the Packers fans. A lot of times you'd be in a Packers game and it'd be, you're quiet, I remember being hurt one year, sitting on the sideline, and our team was out playing, and I think we were playing Jacksonville. And I mean, it was just, I don't know if it was because of the opponent we were playing or what it was, man, but it was dead in there. And I turned around to the fans and I was like raising my hands like, get up, let's go. And everybody was like looking at me like they didn't even know who I was. You know what I'm saying? Because I had street clothes. I had street clothes on. I think they were looking at me like, who is this crazy dude on the sideline, man? What is he talking about? and with Oakland, man, they're they're a little different, man. I mean, they are excited, all the time, man, and they're always letting you know that they're in the stands.
You don't have to tell me. I covered the 49ers. I was in the Bay Area, so I'd go over there every so often, and they were a lot different. They weren't a little different. They were a lot different.
Hey, Charles, you get to the pros in 98, Charles, with the Raiders, and Tim Brown's on that team, and you talk about, an ultimate professional. And Charles, 3 years later, you're still a relatively young player, and Jerry Rice arrives in Oakland. And what was it like being around those two guys, and what'd you learn about how to be a pro from those two guys, Charles?
Yeah, I always think about that, man, because that's like the one thing that, when I got into the league that was mind blowing to me, because I always tell people, it's like, when you grow up and you're watching, NFL football, you never really imagine yourself like being on the same team or, playing against those guys, because it seems so far away, from, high school to, going to the NFL is really going to be a span of like, 4 to 5 years, before you could have a chance to play in the NFL. But it seems like, years and years apart, but actually it's not that big a gap. And then all of a sudden you get, on a team, and you're 21 years old, and here's a guy you've been watching on TV for, the last couple of years playing in the NFL. And it's like, holy crap, man. Like, I'm actually on the same team, with a guy I've been watching for years, so I get on there and I'm on the team with Tim Brown, and, I got to line up with him in practice. And, I remember my first practice going against him was one-on-one, and he ran like a triple move on me or something and embarrassed the hell out of me. And I was like, man, this is how it is, huh? So that was my breaking in moment right off the bat, And then, here comes a couple of years later, the GOAT, Jerry Rice, and it's like, holy cow, I watched this guy in the Super Bowl, catching slants in the end zone, and like, I can't believe I'm on the same team, with this guy. And it was just great to, be around Jerry, because, the work ethic that you heard about Jerry from afar, I got to see it up close, and that was as real as advertised. So, I got to play with two guys who were just really professional, about what they did. They came to work every day, to work on their craft and get better. And, you just, as a young player, you're just able to kind of watch. You're still young, so you're still, doing your own thing, but you always have those guys, kind of looking at them out the corner of your eye, trying to see, what they're doing. So, I enjoyed that time, man, with those guys, and just learned a lot from them.
Charles, in 2008, it's your third year in Green Bay. You got a good team. And Charles, all of a sudden, you got to go through this Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers saga, and you didn't know what the heck was going to happen with Favre, and it was a mess. And so this is like during training camp. Did you care what was going on? What were your feelings at the time about the whole Favre-Rodgers thing?
No, I don't think I really cared too much, what was going on. I mean, that they had, Brett and A-Rod, they had their relationship that, I guess, started off, a little bit rocky, there when he first got there with, Green Bay drafting a quarterback in the first round, and, Brett Favre maybe feeling some kind of way about it. I didn't even care about all that stuff. One thing I knew was I had two good quarterbacks, and it didn't really matter which way we went. You know what I mean? Because I got to line up against Aaron Rodgers in practice when he was playing on scout team, and everybody across the board, going against him as a young player, we all knew, whenever it's his time, we're going to be fine. And then on the other hand, if Brett was going to be there, we're going to be fine too. So for us, we knew we had two, top-notch quarterbacks. So whatever direction that the Packers decided to go, we were going to be fine. So I don't think I cared, really 1 ounce about what was going to happen.
With Hall of Famer Charles Woodson on the eye test for two. And Charles, since Ira led you into that, I will ask you the question about Aaron Rodgers and the saga that's going on now. I'm sure you're aware of it. What's your take on what's happening and how it will be resolved? Speaking sort of as a historical figure with the Favre Rodgers saga as a backdrop, but that seems to be going on now in Green Bay. And Aaron Rodgers, you've been in that locker room with him. Do you believe the differences, at least from your perspective, are irreconcilable?
Yeah, I just think it's funny how things, come full circle. You guys asked me about the Brett and Aaron Rodgers, years and years ago, and then here we are, kind of really in the same boat with Green Bay drafting a quarterback, moving up, to get a quarterback in the first round. When I'm quite sure, A-Rod is looking at that draft, thinking that they could get somebody else that they could put on the offense. To play on the other side of Devontae Adams and just give him a little bit more firepower on the offensive side of the ball. And that didn't happen. And then I look at this offseason, and all of a sudden their center, they let him walk out of there. I'm not sure how close A-Rod was with the center. I'm sure they were probably friends. Of course, they got the center quarterback relationship, but man, here's a guy that played, well for that offensive line, and then he's gone as well. So I just think, A-Rod's kind of looking back, thinking about, the direction, and maybe, they don't necessarily have him in mind as far as the future and long-term future. So I think he's just looking at it like, hey, man, if you drafted a guy that, in a couple of years, he's going to have to play, and my contract, maybe the guaranteed money is out in a year or so, and you're gonna, let me walk, then maybe I should walk now. Maybe I should take advantage of, the few years I have left in my playing career and try to get out of here now and go play somewhere else. So I can see there being a trade. I don't think there's going to be any shortage of teams that would, maybe have some draft capital, a few players on their team that they're willing to part ways with and go out there and get Aaron Rodgers. So, I mean, at this point, the way it's looking, I could see him playing for another team this year.
Yeah, you also, as I mentioned, Aaron Rodgers very well, but that organization very well too. I understand different GM at the time, Ted Thompson, when you were there, but it sounds like the Packers are trying to do everything they can to try to patch up the differences between Aaron and the front office, but it doesn't seem like that's going to work. And so I just wonder, again, knowing that organization, and I think the organization itself doesn't really change, even though the players in it and the participants in the front office do, that the organization's direction doesn't change. Do you think the organization would be willing to sort of say, okay, that's it. We will let you go. We'll find a trade for you, or put their foot down and say, that's not who we are. I mean, if you want to play for somewhere else, then you're not going to play, and you can go host Jeopardy if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to, someone making an offer that they can't refuse. I think that's what it really comes down to. They're not going to let them get out of there for nothing. So I think this is a situation where you got two sides that are probably, going to dig in, and somebody's going to have to make a decision. Either A-Rod's going to have to say, buckle down and say, you know what, I'll come into camp, I'll play this year out, and then, after that, whatever happens, or maybe somebody does come in with that draft capital in a great trade, and the Packers say, you know what, we can't turn that down. A-Rod has been great, but we'll see you somewhere else. So it's all going to make for an interesting summer. I can tell you that.
That's for sure.
Charles, I got one more for you. Thanks so much for doing this, Charles. Look, I know how much you're looking forward to August, putting that gold jacket on, seeing that bust. Charles, who's going to be your presenter, and are you going in as a Raider or a Packer?
Yeah, I got my presenter narrowed down to a couple of people. I want to announce it quite yet, but I'll be making that decision pretty soon. And then as far as going in, I mean, I'm a Packer and a Raider, man. So I'm going in as both. I'm not going to put one over the other, man. I'm going in both squads. I can't tell my NFL story without both teams. So it's only fitting that I would go in as both.
Well, Charles, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but you're the only person who's going to be presented a jacket that's actually half gold and half silver and black.
I like that. I'll take it however it comes, man. I'm gonna put it on and I'm gonna wear it proudly. I'll tell you
that. Charles, I've got two last ones for you, and they'll be quick. First of all, you played in both conferences. Who was the quarterback who gave you the most trouble? The quarterback you respected the most?
Oh man, I mean there was a couple of them, but I mean Peyton Manning was. I mean, I think that kind of goes without saying. I think, most of the people that you play against, would say this, or people that played against him would, probably say the same thing. But, him, Tom Brady, of course, and Drew Brees, those guys, man, they were a cut above. And I think it shows in the numbers that they put up, yardage-wise and touchdowns, man, is that they always knew exactly where to go with the ball. It seemed like if you tipped your hat, or tipped your hand, in the slightest, they were going to pick it up. But it was fun to go against those guys, man, and that's the reason why they're all-time greats.
And lastly, you've got a gold jacket, and you'll be presented with your bust in August. But if you could give a gold jacket and a bust to somebody who's not currently in the Hall of Fame, somebody who's still out there, who would it be?
Oh man, I think I would have to. Man, good buddy of mine. He's no longer with us. I would have to go Cliff Branch. Mm-hmm. I'd go Cliff Branch, man. I think if you look at his career, man, and what he did, Super Bowls, yardage, he was just as feared as any receiver in the history of this game. And I know he's got a lot of respect around the league. And, you just wish he would be alive when his name is called, for the Hall of Fame. So I'll go Cliff Branch.
Full disclosure, Charles, we've asked other people on here the same question. That's a popular response.
Oh man, I mean, you look at his body of work, man, and I think you can put it up against pretty much anybody, and it's gonna hold up.
Charles Woodson, thanks so much for the time, and we'll see you in Kent in the summer. And also, thanks for the time when you were a player. Really appreciate stopping by your locker.
Hey man, thanks a lot, man. Thank you guys for having me, and like you said, I'll see you in August, man. Let's have a good time.
You got it, Charles.
Thanks, Charles.
Take care. Congratulations.
Yep. See you guys.
That was Hall of Famer Charles Woodson, class of 2021. And Ira, I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit surprised by his response about the Super Bowl versus the Hall of Fame. I understand it, but that's rare when you hear somebody say that. And I thought it was gracious.
It tells you a lot about Charles Woodson. And what's also telling, Clark? You asked him, he could have picked anybody. He could have said Hines Ward. He could have, who he played against in that Super Bowl, which was a heck of a Super Bowl. The Green Bay Pittsburgh Super Bowl 2009 season. And he picked a guy that played in the 70s, Clark.
Yeah, right.
Now, maybe because he was a Raider, maybe. But I don't think he would have picked him if he didn't believe in him. And Cliff Branch is gathering some serious momentum, Mr. Judge. Serious.
As we've discovered on this show. Whoa, Ira, that must be Las Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Raiders, Oakland Raiders fans. I don't know, Raiders fans everywhere cheering that comment. They like it. Either that or cheering the fact that you're back with us with this week's I Was There. So where were you, Ira, and when were you there?
Clark, we're going out to the desert. We're going, and I'm not talking about Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about Glendale, Arizona, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
January 18th, 2009, NFC Championship game. Eagles at Cardinals. Now, Clark, people forget, even though the Cardinals won the game 32-25, they got into the Super Bowl and could have easily beat Pittsburgh without that final fantastic play from Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
But they were 9-7, Clark. They were a 9-7 team. They scored 427 points. They gave up 426. They scored one more point than they gave up, and that's why the Eagles were favored, Clark, on the road.
Right.
But McNabb did his job, Clark, 375 yards, 3 touchdowns. However, in the second phase of his career, here comes Kurt Warner, 4 touchdown passes. But Clark, here's what I think was the dominant note that came out of that game and almost that whole season. The phenomenal postseason run of one Lawrence Fitzgerald. Unstoppable. 3 of those 4 touchdowns went to Larry Fitzgerald, who caught 9 balls, 152 yards. And then Clark, in the second half of the Super Bowl in Tampa, which you were probably there.
I was.
The Steelers, who had a great defense, they could not handle Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Couldn't handle it. And, in fact, I think he scored the touchdown that put Arizona on top.
Yeah, he did.
So that was the Larry Fitzgerald postseason. And except for one of the great plays in Super Bowl history, Arizona would have been holding up the Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ira. And I remember watching that game because I was in Pittsburgh watching the AFC Championship game. And what I remember from that ball game was thinking, Philadelphia's going to win it, right? No, they're not. That was their 5th conference championship game in 8 years. And I felt great sympathy for Andy Reid because I knew him well, really wanted to see him get back to the Super Bowl. And I thought that's a great opportunity for him to get back. And he didn't. Unfortunately, he didn't. So as we know now, he's gotten back with the Kansas City Chiefs and he's had success. So, that was a great performance by Larry Fitzgerald and by Kurt Warner. Ira, final thoughts?
Well, we're still wondering about this Aaron Rodgers situation. Clark, I'm gonna go out on a limb. Your sweaty co-host will go out on a limb, and I'm gonna say, Clark, that they work it out. In the words of John and Paul, we can work it out. Clark, Jordan Love's not ready. He's not ready, and I think the Packers are staring at 6-10 without Mr. Rodgers. He's a prima donna, Clark. He's one of the great ones. But he's a great player, Clark, and that goes a long way. I say throw him some money, make him happy, and bring him back.
Well, I'm glad you referenced John and Paul because, Ira, they did say we can work it out, but they didn't. They split, right? And that's what's going to happen here. There's no turning back for Aaron Rodgers. No turning back. I say you're wrong on that.
Let it be, Clark. Let it be. Let it be.
I say help. You know what? We got a dinner at Burns on that one, Ira, okay?
Helter Skelter. He's staying, baby.
Ira, tell people where they can find you on Twitter, especially if they want to hear some more Beatles references.
At iKaufman76, Clark.
How about you, Ian?
It's at IGLEN31.
And I am at Clark Judge, TOF. And Ian, tell them where they can find all of us.
Of course, that's at the iTest4 2, all letters, no numbers.
All right. And Ira, you can tell them what happens if we don't hear from them.
You're going to hear from us on the iTest for 2.
You got it. Thanks so much. We'll see you then.